were a bit different, but she bore a strong resemblance to Remedios. Still, those subtle distinctions resulted in a dramatic change in the impression she made. She seemed like she had a hidden agenda, to put it unkindly, like she had some scheme up her sleeve. This was Remedios' sister, 2 years younger than her, Kellart Custodio. She was a high cleric and the head of the clergy. Her magical ability allowed her to use up to Tier 4 faith spells, or rather, that was her cover story. The public had no idea of her true ability. Those close to her knew she could cast Tier 5 as well. Incidentally, she was not one of the 9 colors, though she was subordinate to both the influence of the shrines of the Holy Lady, due to various considerations for the balance of power. The country thought it politically wise to avoid bestowing a color on her. Together, these two were known as the Genius Custodio sisters, the right and left hand of the Holy Lady. Since many nobles suspected that Calca, despite being a woman, had ascended to the throne thanks to the Custodio sisters working behind the scenes, unfavorable remarks were often aimed at all 3 of them. They had cleared plenty of bad rumors, but there was one, that since they were all unmarried and had never even gone around with men, they must have been in some inappropriate relationship together. They couldn't get rid of, no matter how many times they denied it, which pained Calca.
Hearing that makes my head hurt. It's really just a lot of trouble if you win and don't stand to gain anything.
But there are reports that the subhumans are well outfitted this time. Couldn't we sell their gear or something?
Exactly! Is what I'd like to say, but I can't agree, honored sister. You say we could sell the gear, but to whom? You aren't thinking this through. We'd have to sell them to another country, and no one will want to pay premium prices for subhuman gear. Plus, we should avoid furnishing the armories of our neighbors until we finish rebuilding the battered section of wall. I especially don't want the Nation of Darkness flooding in.
Oh? You're against the Nation of Darkness? I never heard anything about that at court.
None of the priests like them. Do you feel differently, Your Holy Majesty?
Calca thought for a moment. As a person of the cloth, as the holy ruler, she hated it. But as the head of state,
a sovereign's job is to care for subjects and to give them peace. If their king is capable of that, then why should I mind?
The sisters exchanged glances in front of her.
Careful people? A thought like that would never enter an undead's mind.
I agree with my sister. I hardly think an undead could have compassion for the people the way you do, Your Holy Majesty.
You're both so harsh. You mustn't badmouth someone you've never even met.
The 2 of them, at a loss, wore nearly identical expressions.
Yup, they're sisters,
Calca thought, and she suppressed a smile tugging at the corners of her mouth to speak in a more solemn tone.
What do the staff officers have to say? Tell me about the plan to counter Yaldabaoth, Kellart.
The Holy Lady had been visiting the base to raise the soldiers' morale, so she missed the war planning meeting. The Sacred Kingdom soldiers had better training than those of other countries, but they were still a levy army. Maintaining morale was crucial.
Yes, Your Holy Majesty. There's a debate about the various scenarios we can envision. If the subhumans surrounded the city, if they pass us by, if they veer south, if they split their forces into 2 or 3 groups to go after multiple objectives, and so on.
This was the sort of moment where Calca recognized that although the sisters resembled each other, they were quite different. If she had asked the elder of the 2, she would only have been able to get a frustratingly meandering report that never got to the point.
I see. In which scenario do they believe to be most likely? Given the way the subhumans tend to conduct their raids and what has happened so far, they feel that an encirclement is most likely. But there's one problem this time. Yes, there is. Isn't there?
What's that? Remedios had been escorting Calca, so she hadn't attended the planning meeting either. But the fact that the Holy Lady understood immediately, and she didn't stem from different issues.
Honored sister, The demon who rampaged in the capital, Yaldabaoth. I don't know what kind of intellect he possesses, but demons tend to be quite crafty. He may have some stratagem we're not prepared for.
Ah, that makes it tough for the staff officers who have to plan the operation then, huh? Kalka had a thing or two she would have liked to say to the commander of the Paladins, but she held her tongue.
This is a real pickle we're in. So what will we do if the subhumans surround us? We have plenty of provisions. But what I'm scared of is what happens if morale falls among the defenders. The planners took that into account, right? Yes, Your Holy Majesty. Normally, we would only have to hold out until reinforcements from the south arrived. But there are reports that Yaldabaoth uses mysterious powers and is capable of breaching our wall with a single attack. That's making everyone rather nervous.
All three of them furrowed their brows. Considering what had happened at the border wall, anyone's face would go cloudy. But Kalka knew better. Remedios was only imitating her and Kellart. Remedios didn't use her head, and she was stubborn. If it was only that, they would merely be personality flaws. But those qualities were also what made her capable of dispensing absolute justice. Thinking about what justice actually is complicates things significantly. For instance, say there are two children. One is human, one is subhuman. Since they are both pure and innocent, they become friends. But adults discover the subhuman and capture the child. The human child begs them to have mercy. But if they let the subhuman go, the child could grow up and one day return to take revenge on them. Would killing the subhuman child be just or not? There is no easy answer to the question. Kalka would hesitate to take a life in such a situation. But Remedios would kill without a second thought. She had the unwavering belief that it was the right thing to do. Anything that could give the people of her country joy was something she agreed with. When she assumed the throne, Kalka told her two friends that she would bring joy to the weak and make this a country where no one cries. And in response, Remedios swore to uphold justice as her ardent supporter. She had taken that vow further than anyone, and the fire in her eyes was similar to fanaticism. If that was all there was to the woman named Remedios, she would have been a dangerous individual. However, Kalka had never felt the need to steer clear of her. It made sense to be fond of goodness, that loved people, loved peace, hated evil, and wanted to help the helpless. And due to that personality, she had no hidden motives. Since she never used her head all that much, it was clear that everything she said and did came from the heart. Organizations, especially those that had existed for many years, often grew inflexible over time as obligation and ceremony mounted. And in the same way, blood grew cloudy. It was only natural that siblings should quarrel over ascension to the sole seat that rested at the pinnacle of authority. And the race continued out of suspicion, envy, fear, right up until a life was taken. Kalka had been freed from that fate early on, because she had been able to acquire the most powerful magic of any holy king in history. Once people obtained something to be proud of, they usually rested easier. Thus, Kalka had been prepared to give up on becoming holy king. Her siblings, however, were not. The only blood relative she could trust now was an older brother, Caspond. Because she'd lived in such a simple way, Remedios was an oasis for Kalka's heart. That's unbelievable power. It reminds me of the evil spirits that show up in stories.
Honored sister, not even the evil spirits were that powerful. It's possible that Yaldabaoth is superior to them. Well, that's no good. How can we beat him? What are you worried for, Your Holy Majesty? I heard that in the Riestes kingdom, an adamantite adventurer drove him off. Don't you think we should be able to handle him? Yes. If an adventurer on par with us was able to, then the question is whether Yaldabaoth can use that wall-crumbling power multiple times in quick succession. The staff officers feel that since he only used it once when he struck the wall, he must not be able to use it again immediately.
That makes sense. If he could cast it often, that was an opportune time to do so. If he didn't, that means he can probably only use it once. Calca and Remedios agreed. There was little apparent reason for him not to continue blasting the wall apart if he was capable of it. Calca was of the same mind. She lightly touched the crown on her head. It was a magic item. The focal device of the hereditary great ritual spell of the Sacred Kingdom, Last Holy War.
Well, high-ranking adventurers familiar with hunting down monsters have obeyed the National Mobilization Order and joined the military. I'm sure if we bring all our power to bear, Yaldabaoth wouldn't be impossible to defeat. After all, we have the precedent of him being driven off at least once.
The Adventurers Guild had vehemently protested the drafting of adventurers as soldiers. But Calca refused to make exceptions to the order. Of course she didn't. It would be the height of folly to divide their strength during a national emergency. And the Adventurers Guild in the Sacred Kingdom didn't have the influence it did in the neighboring kingdom. Forcing it to obey was a simple matter.
Right. But not getting the details about what happened with him in the kingdom was a screw-up. My apologies. Oh no, Kellart. I don't blame you. I should have prioritized gathering information from abroad.
No, Your Holy Majesty. It's actually Kellart's bad.
Honored sister? Hey! It's definitely not my fault. I was busy guarding Her Holy Majesty Calca and exterminating monsters. I did my job. I do what I'm best at.
Remedios puffed her chest out. She was right. What she said was correct, but there was something wrong with it.
Could the people vanishing from the villages be related to Yaldabaoth somehow? Maybe.
It had happened a while ago. All of a sudden, the population of several villages simply disappeared. They weren't able to find any clues to lead them to a perpetrator. But maybe Yaldabaoth was the one behind the incident.
Then, before we kill him, should we interrogate him about that? But if that's the case, dang. If only the kingdom had slain him when they had the chance. Gazif Stronov didn't fight him.
Kellart shot a quizzical look at Calca. It must have meant, "You haven't told her yet?" So Calca replied perfectly with a tired smile. In words, it probably would have been something like,
Of course I did. I told her how Yaldabaoth attacked the capital, how he was repelled by the adventurers, and how other demons showed up, and how the captain of the Royal Select drove them off. It either went in one ear and out the other, or was pushed out by newer information. I feel bad for your deputy commanders, honored sister.
Huh? What do they have to do with anything? Kellart massaged her temples with her fingers instead of answering. Since Remedios didn't use her brain, she needed people to clean up after her. Her two deputies. Kellart understood their pain all too well. But because Remedios was so naive, or to be blunt, rather stupid, she was a healing presence for a tired heart, so things more or less balanced out.
I don't know all the details, but apparently he was fighting other demons, one with scales.
None of this would have happened if he could have just defeated him for us. I can't imagine that adamantite adventurer is stronger than Gazif.
I don't know, but I wouldn't rule it out.
Remedios made a sour face. She must have been displeased at the idea that someone she considered strong could be inferior to a stranger. Well, yeah, he could only wield a sword. If he had attacks for countering demons like I do, it might be a different story. In terms of pure combat ability, paladins were a notch below warriors, but against evil beings, they performed extremely well. What Remedios said was right, but Kellart emitted a little sigh. Just then, Calca thought she heard the faint ringing of a bell. Remedios leaped into action. She was always the one to move first in these situations. She pushed the window open. An early autumn breeze rushed in, forcing out the air inside that had been somewhat warmed by the trio's body heat. Carried on that bracing gust was indeed the sound of a bell, proof that the earlier noise hadn't been her ears playing tricks on her. How much she would have preferred it to have been a figment of her imagination. At the same time, a set of footsteps could be heard as several people pounded down the hallway. "Holy Lady Calca, get behind me!" Remedios stepped forward, drawing sacred sword Sarfar Alicia, and took up a position between Calca and the door. The door banged open. "Your Holy Majesty!" She recognized the man who was first through the door, the Chief of Staff. "What is it? What a racket you're kicking up!" Scolded by Remedios, the man answered as he tried to catch his breath.
"There is no time to leisurely stroll over. Your Holy Majesty, it's Yaldabaoth! He's inside the city! And multiple demons are tearing through the streets. The subhumans are also on the move. They're probably advancing on us."
What?
The subhuman army was spotted on the outskirts of town. I have no idea how they slipped past the patrols, but we have the wrong info. I have no doubt they'll mount an attack in no time.
It was so much news at once, Calca couldn't take it all in. But that hesitation only lasted a moment. With the face of a queen, she gave orders.
This is not what we anticipated. But the fight against Yaldabaoth starts now. Prepare to battle the subhumans while we keep Yaldabaoth busy. Pass on my orders to the adventurers too.
As she listened to her subordinates acknowledge, her doubts returned.
Are we sure we're not underestimating him?
She certainly didn't mean to underestimate a demon who had broken their nation's great wall. But was it a mistake to even think they could win? Would it be better to flee until they gathered more intelligence?
No,
thought Calca, crushing the apprehension that had sprouted inside her. If they didn't fight now, then when? Intelligence was important, certainly, but there was no better chance to bring their powers into play. As the war went on and resources dwindled, it would only become more difficult for the Sacred Kingdom to muster its full strength. And fleeing while collecting intelligence would mean allowing the people and land of the kingdom to be ravaged. There was no telling how many of her subjects would be harmed if that happened.
Bring joy to the weak, and make this a country where no one cries. Right?
Yes, Holy Lady Calca. Remedios met her private comment with a resounding reply.
Boy, I was naive when I was younger. I could hardly have set more impossible goals for myself. He's all full of himself because they got past the big wall. He even waltzed right into our midst completely alone.
Remedios barked in anticipation.
But is that true? Well, it's what I'll have to believe.
But she couldn't get the feeling that they were making a serious mistake out of her head.
Still, don't let your guard down. You should approach him with the understanding that he's more than powerful enough to do terrifying things on his own. Of course, Holy Lady Calca. Please consider me fully guarded. I'll present you with his head after I cut it off with the sacred sword, Sarfalicia. Miss no good. Getting her to calm down is beyond my power.
Despite that thought, Calca wasn't worried. Remedios was like a completely different person in combat.
Ah, a severed head doesn't do much for me, but I'm very glad to have your loyalty. Chief of Staff, please work according to the plan to defeat him and buy us time.
Of course. I've already set out the vanguard.
Calca felt a dull pain in her heart. The order just now essentially meant,
send them to die.
She was telling him,
take soldiers who have no chance of winning and throw them at Yaldabaoth to slow him down.
A ruler's job was to abandon a minority to save the majority. She had no right to complain. Soldiers would die as a result of her order. So to honor them, she had to play her role to perfection. She had to act the part of the supreme ruler, Holy Lady, adored by all.
All right, everyone. Let's go!
The moment she clapped her hands, everyone leaped into motion. 4. Clutching her holy sword, Remedios cut down a demon. One of her deputies had told her what they were called, but she couldn't remember. Imbued with holy energy, the sword delivered terrible damage to evil beings, an effect worthy of its name. The rampaging demon tumbled to the ground, emitting something like steam from its wounds, and disappeared. Only after a few seconds, there was no trace that a demon had been there at all, but the victims of its violence remained. "What have they done?" Remedios exclaimed upon seeing the soldiers, not the vanguard, but the ones who had been patrolling the city, strewn upon the ground. One's leather armor was split, and the hand pressed desperately against his abdomen was stained bright red, pink and intestines peeked out from beneath it. His face had gone past pale to bone white. Remedios didn't have any medical training, but she knew from experience there was no time to take him to a surgeon. He needed immediate magical healing. The reason this man wasn't dead was neither a coincidence nor due to superior skills. It had to be exactly what the demon intended to do, not that Remedios had any idea why. Still, that didn't mean not saving these soldiers. Abandoning them was an option. Who could forsake those brave troops who were out there fighting for their country to buy their comrades time? Above all, she was a holy knight of justice. Treat him! She was working with a team of elite paladins, but they also had a few priests with them. The order was directed at the latter. A deputy was in her ear, whispering immediately.
I think it might be better to take him to a surgeon in the rear. If the priests use their powers now, they might run out of mana in the fight against Yaldabaoth. And that might be why the demon—
You talk too much! My order stands! Heal him to the point that he can move on his own! And— She looked at her deputy. I can't hear you mumbling through your helmet. Speak clearly!
Never mind.
Good. Healing magic patched the soldiers up instantly. Of course, they weren't completely mended. It was Tier 1 magic. It couldn't bring half-dead soldiers back to full health, but it helped them enough so they could move. If they were no longer on the brink of death, there wasn't any more magic to spare for them. Remedios remembered how insistent her little sister had been about the judicious use of resources.
Brave soldiers, listen to me. Your wounds should have been healed the minimum amount necessary. Fall back and have a surgeon take a good look at you.
The pain of walking would surely bring tears to their eyes. But she didn't have time to listen to whining like that. She had to reach Yaldabaoth within the allotted time. The troops must have grasped the meaning in her gaze, because they agreed with no objection.
Good. Then, farewell.
Remedios sprinted off in the lead. Her metal armor was lighter and easier to move in than it looked. That, plus her muscular strength, meant she could run faster than anyone else. But her sister, Kalka, and her deputies had told her over and over not to go charging into a fight on her own. So she slowed her pace down to match the others, suppressing the feeling that they had to hurry to make up for lost time. Before too long, they arrived at their destination, a certain corner of the city. The streets looked utterly normal, but they had already been evacuated, so there wasn't a single soul to be seen.
Commander, we turn right on this avenue and head straight down it. Then, it's just one more right, and we'll come out onto the square, where Yaldabaoth should be waiting. Shall we go ahead ourselves, just to confirm? No, we'll wait for Holy Lady Kalka and my sister, as well as the adventurers. Once everyone is here, we'll do the final checks. Raise the flag!
Following her order, one of the knights attached a flag to a building a short distance away. That was a signal to the other units that Remedios' elite squad of paladins had arrived. There were about 500 paladins who belonged to the order. Most of them could hold their own in a fight against monsters of difficulty level 20, but some were so tough they could take on 60s. The best 25 of those elite paladins formed the code of Remedios' unit. Incidentally, the other 300 or so paladins she had brought to the city were headed toward the wall to prepare to meet the advancing subhuman army. Normally, it might have been better to have all the groups work together and avoid the risk of being picked off one by one. But Yaldabaoth had that mysterious, wall-shattering, area of effect attack. To avoid giving him an easy target, they were operating separately. Along the same line of thought, the flag they had raised earlier was kept slightly away from the unit, in case Yaldabaoth aimed for it.
Do you think he can use that power he broke the wall with more than once, Isandro?
The Paladin Order had 2 deputy commanders. One was a mediocre swordsman who was valued for other reasons, Gustav Montagnes. He was leading the knights headed for the city wall. The other was next to Remedios, Pink of the 9 Colors, Isandro Sanchez.
If he could use it as many times as he wanted, I don't understand why he wouldn't be using it right now. I believe it's safe to assume there is some sort of condition that has to be met, or that it will be some time before he can use that again. Right. Maybe I was worrying too much, splitting us up like this. No, not at all. He could be conserving some vast power. We can't let our guard down. Ah, true. Got it.
Remedios ended the conversation. She really wasn't one for using her brain. Politics, especially, gave her a headache. In particular, she didn't understand why the nobles frowned and complained about there being no precedent for a woman being Holy King. Kalka's title was the greatest proof of that discontent. As a female Holy King, people called her the Holy Lady. That's what was decided on when they refused to give primacy to a female title by calling her Holy Queen or changing the title to something else. In that sense, Remedios found it simpler to just think about things in terms of strong and weak.
Commander Custodio, the flags from the priest and the adventurer groups have also been raised.
And Her Holy Majesty Kalka?
Not yet.
I see. But go ahead and start casting defensive spells that will last. Once Holy Lady Kalka arrives, we'll make first contact with the Older Beoth. We'll distract him as bait. Still your resolve, and be ready for his special attack. Her troops responded with a brave cheer.
He hasn't moved from the square.
The initial unit had already been wiped out. If their target had moved, the adventurer scouting ahead should have notified them. If there was no report, it meant that Yaldabaoth hadn't gone anywhere.
This demon is going to be sorry if he's underestimating us. He probably thinks if he kills us all here, that he'll have no trouble conquering the whole kingdom. But Commander, he could be buying time. If Yaldabaoth pins us here, the subhumans will have an easier fight. Aha! That could be it. This Yaldabaoth guy is pretty smart. He's a demon, so I suppose he's devilishly intelligent. I'm gonna thrash this cocky demon and make him cry.
Remedios vowed to the gods, and as if it had been waiting for that moment, the last flag rose.
Deputy! Yes, ma'am. We're ready to go. All right, follow me!
Remedios ran, determined to stick her sword through that ridiculous demon's face. She turned the corner, sprinted, and turned another corner. Then, in the middle of the square dyed red with the blood of scattered corpses, she saw a strange figure. He wore a mask, and a tail curled out from his backside. He looked just as the soldiers who had escaped said he did. No bat wings or curved horns. The only thing that pointed him out as a grotesque was his tail. Seeing him like this gave the impression he was just a man with a mask on. But...
So you're Yaldabaoth?
I rolled out the red car. Oh.
As she stepped into the square, the pungent stench of innards and blood hit her nose, and a chunk of flesh squished beneath her foot. But she wasn't aware of any of that. All she cared about was charging in and bringing down her sword. When he dodged her attack so easily, she became even more uncomfortable and raised her blade again. And he evaded once more. Remedios knew that even if she spent hours and hours studying, she couldn't get good results. That's why she had put all her time into raising her fighting power. It was clear that she had some aptitude in that area, and that's how she became known as the strongest warrior in the country. Paladin Remedios Custodio's instinct screamed at her.
It's no accident that Yaldabaoth is dodging. He only appears relaxed because he's that skilled. There are only a handful of humans capable of keeping up the battle that is about to unfold. I need more magic support.
And at moments like these, Remedios' instincts were never wrong.
Take cover! You guys need to find shelter! No, give us a wide berth! This demon is strong!
As she said that, she took some distance like her subordinates did. Her troops shifted a lot, but she didn't go quite that far. 4 yards at most, so she was within striking distance if she took a running start. Yaldabaoth's shoulders slumped.
You're like a bull, huh? What? Did someone wave a red cloth?
Ignoring the demon's comments, Remedios noticed the soldiers led by Kellart and Calca out of the corner of her eye. They were rushing over, surprised that Remedios had already engaged. The demon turned his entire body to face Calca, leaving his unprotected back open to Remedios. But she knew that he was waiting for her to attack from behind, so she didn't move.
You guys, he's strong! If you don't have the soldiers, fall back! They'll die for no reason!
The two listened to her shout and acted accordingly. Only Kellart and Calca approached. Remedios maintained her distance from Yaldabaoth, but circled around to stand in front of the other two.
Remedios, please don't try too hard. Listen, honored sister. Isn't this a sort of adversary we should all take on together?
Though registering their nagging behind her, Remedios never took her eyes off Yaldabaoth. He could use the power that broke the wall at any second. The instant he seemed like he was going to try it, she intended to attack. But she didn't get any sense of that from him. His leisurely air made her nervous.
I'm definitely, no matter what, going to make you crawl in the dirt. So, you're Yaldabaoth, are you?
The way he shrugged his shoulders in response to Calca's question offended Remedios even more. Every single thing he did annoyed her.
That is correct. Your slave attacked without even waiting for my reply. What was she planning to do if she had been mistaken? Though I am impressed to find non-verbal barbarians in the Sacred Kingdom. Oh, just in case, let me confirm. You're the current Holy King? That's right. You don't need to introduce yourself to this villain, Holy Lady Calca.
Remedios thrust the point of her sword at Yaldabaoth.
If we know this is Yaldabaoth, all that's left is to kick his ass back to the demon world. No need to sully our tongues with Remedios, wasn't the plan to see what he had to say?
Remedios cocked her head in response to Calca's confusion.
Is that what was decided?
It seemed that Kellart had cast a spell from the rear. A blaze of warmth spreading inside her brought forth a surprising amount of power. Her previous attack had been dodged, but now she was confident she could hit him. That's when she realized.
Oh, listening to him was about buying time. But I'm generous, so we can talk a little bit. Is there anything you want to ask?
Yaldabaoth had his hand pressed over his mask on the spot between his eyes. It was the same gesture she often saw from Kellart, Calca, and her deputies.
Please take all the time you need. You can prepare in desperation, but a power greater than you will trample and rob you of your lives, and those who look on will despair even more. What a delightful scene. I would never allow that to happen! Sorry, Remedios. Could you be quiet for a second?
Calca spoke somewhat firmly, and Remedios closed her mouth. Her tone of voice changed only slightly, but Remedios knew from experience that it meant she was annoyed.
Remedios, let's back up a bit. But if I back up any farther, I won't be able to strike if he does something. Oh, that's all right. How about we say that I won't attack until either our conversation is over, or someone from your side attacks first? Why would I take what a demon says at face value? Remedios! Fine.
When she followed the order and fell back, Kellart whispered an explanation in her ear through her helmet.
Holy Lady Calca wants to get some information out of him. No matter what he says, control yourself.
Remedios grunted her disapproval. They were up against a demon, so they should consider anything he said a lie. Slaying him at once would be easier since it required less brain power. But upsetting her master's plans wasn't a very loyal thing to do. She had to sit tight and tolerate this.
Now then, evil Emperor Yaldabaoth. There's something I'd like to ask you. What is your purpose in coming here? If you want to overrun this country, why aren't you operating alongside the subhumans you had with you when you broke our wall? Could it be that? Yes, you can stop right there. I know what you're going to say. It seems you're operating under a misunderstanding. It's not as if I came alone because I want to negotiate.
From behind her, Remedios heard Calca murmur a disappointed,
Oh, I see. There are two reasons I came alone. One is that you being crushed by me alone is more despair-inducing than if you fell in battle against an army of subhumans. The second is to avoid making the mistake I made in the kingdom. I never imagined a warrior with strength on par with me existed in those lands. So, I came to investigate whether there was someone like that here or not. There might be. I can say with certainty there is not. I gave you this much time. If such a person existed, they would surely be next to you. The most important person in this country. But I don't see anyone who matches the description. Not even among those sneaking around like rats. Hey! Are you saying we're not the strongest at warrior?
Remedios shouted, unable to hold herself back. That was a comment she couldn't ignore. She had forgotten half of what Kalka and her sister had told her, but she at least managed to keep herself from attacking.
That's exactly what I was saying. But did you not understand for some reason? Is that all you want to know? Your Holy Majesty? There was one other thing, but no matter. Angel Unit, forward!
Kalka's determined shout filled the square, and the angels hidden among the guards and priests, forming the perimeter behind her, all spread their wings and flew into the air. 5 flame archangels, armed with swords of flames, and summoned with a Tier 3 spell. 20 angel guardians summoned with a Tier 2 spell. And a single principality piece that Kalka had been summoning with a Tier 4 spell the whole time on their way over. Remedios didn't remember what sort of powers the angels had, but she knew that the principality piece that Kalka summoned could cast low-level faith magic and had skills that allowed the angel to smite evil, grant some protection from enemy attacks, purify elements, and more. She had seen her summon it any number of times. Soaking in the crackling energy around her, Remedios realized she didn't need to hold back any longer and charged. Normally, the priests would launch attack spells to support her, but there weren't any this time. Perhaps they were saving their mana to summon angels. Remedios used a skill from one of her classes, Evil Slayer, that boosted the holy energy in her holy sword. Suddenly, 5 adventurers appeared behind Yaldabaoth. They must have been using a spell to go invisible and close the distance. Remedios had no idea why they abruptly showed themselves, because while she was aware that invisibility existed, she had no idea what kind of spell it was or why the effects might cut off. Yaldabaoth showed no signs of intercepting the suddenly visible adventurers. No, he didn't even appear to notice them. Was the threat she sensed from him an error? Or was this a phantom, or a double instead of the real thing? No. She rejected the latter thought. That couldn't be. Her instinct, her nose for evil, told her that Yaldabaoth was here. The adventurers panicked and attacked. Just as their weapons should have connected, strange wings sprouted from Yaldabaoth's back, skewering the adventurers behind him like knives. Their chests penetrated. Blood must have flooded their lungs. Coughing up bloody foam, a single adventurer mustered the last of his vitality to bring his weapon down again. But even though the hit landed cleanly on Yaldabaoth, it didn't seem to hurt him in the slightest. The fact that they were here meant they had to be capable adventurers. Surely, they had armed themselves with consecrated weapons as part of their preparations. If they still couldn't harm him, Yaldabaoth had to be one high-level demon. As the situation continued to evolve rapidly in the space of a few blinks, Remedios had closed their distance and swung her holy sword down diagonally. Yaldabaoth jumped aside and used his tentacle-like wings, or maybe they really are tentacles, to hurl the bodies of the impelled adventurers at her. She had no interest in catching them. Removing her left hand from the hilt of the sword and punching them aside, she simultaneously used a martial art, flow acceleration, to swoop in. Then she lunged. The holy sword she thrust toward his throat was parried with nails that had lengthened instantaneously. Holy attack! The moment her sword connected with the claws, her power flooded into him through the blade. This skill paladins gained early on was really supposed to be used when their sword cut deep into their opponent's flesh. But it was still possible to use even with a glancing blow. The holy energy would bubble away on the surface of their target's body, so the damage wasn't terribly high. But the reason she used it anyway was that her instincts as a paladin, animal instincts, her sister called them, screamed at her to prevent a fall in morale by demonstrating they still had a way to fight Yaldabaoth even after all those adventurers were killed.
I see.
The angels positioned themselves between Yaldabaoth, who had jumped back farther, and Remedios. Floating at nearly her height, they attacked Yaldabaoth. Remedios clicked her tongue. The high-pitched metallic noise that had rung out when her holy sword clashed with Yaldabaoth's claws told her how hard they were. And though her form hadn't been perfect, the fact that he could easily parry her boosted attack spoke to his physical strength. Only a handful of the strongest could fight an opponent so powerful. Angels summoned with tier 2 and 3 spells were fine for exterminating regular old monsters. But in this fight, they were only in the way. The angel's shoes dangling right in her field of vision were especially maddening.
Penetrating magic! Holy ray!
Her sister loosed a spell, but it disappeared before Yaldabaoth, as if it had been repelled.
Twin penetrating magic! Holy ray!
Kalka shot 2 rays. She must have hoped that at least one of them would get through Yaldabaoth's magic immunity ability. But unfortunately, both of them ended up just like Kellart's.
He must have quite high defense against magic, which means I have to do everything I can.
She roared, with even more spirit.
Please use your brains and make the angels fight smarter! This is pointless!
And in fact, despite the angels occupying an advantageous overhead position, and the soldiers surrounding him, Yaldabaoth was still composed. But that made sense. Despite the number of opponents encircling him, no one had managed to land an effective attack yet. Adventurers raced over to recover the bodies of their fallen comrades, laying on the ground near Remedios. The fact that they didn't so much as twitch must have meant they were dead. But maybe the living were choosing to have faith in slim possibilities.
What a pain. Even puny worms are irritating when so many gather up in one spot.
Yaldabaoth was completely at ease. And if he was immune to the spells being cast and could evade every physical attack, then he probably thought he had an overwhelming advantage. But
you'd think I've never fought someone like that before?
Unless the caster specialized in summoning, the summoned monsters would be weaker than the caster themselves. So it wasn't unheard of for the attacks of angels to be ineffective. The optimal way to use angels against a powerful opponent. The angels swooped down to attack Yaldabaoth all at once. Not slashing with their swords, but tackling, was to stop them in their tracks. That was effective. Perhaps he was feeling some pressure. Yaldabaoth transitioned to offense and sent several angels back to the void with a single swipe of his claws. But the gap made by any angel that had been cut down was simply filled by another that continued the assault. That was the true horror of summoned monsters. They were beings for whom death didn't count as death, so they could use their abilities to the fullest. Remedios' eyes widened as she watched the waterfall-like hammering of angels, and the way Yaldabaoth handled them, as if he were working an assembly line. However,
he's letting his guard down.
After approaching quietly, she waited for Yaldabaoth to be critically distracted by the onslaught of angels, and then leaped into range.
What?
Ah! She activated a skill and struck a mighty blow with her holy sword using a martial art. Her instinct whispered to her that it wasn't time to unleash the sword's greatest reservoir of power that could only be used once per day. On the receiving end of her second most powerful attack, Yaldabaoth went flying in what seemed like a horizontal flight path. Then he ducked into a shop on the opposite side of the square. Remedios stared down at her sword hand. Crap!
Honored sister, you did it!
Kellogg sounded so happy, but Remedios yelled back at her. Not yet, I haven't. There's no way he'd go flying like that.
I think it's possible given how insanely strong you are.
No! He flew away on his own. Yes. Not only had she let him slip through the encirclement, she'd given him the opportunity to hide in a building. The only reason they'd had half a chance against him was because they had surrounded him and forced him into a fight of one against many. Combat in a cramped house would be too dangerous for Remedios. And maybe Yaldabaoth had decided that playtime was over and would change up his moves.
Remedios! What should we do?
Kalka cried out to her. Usually, it was Remedios asking the questions and Kalka answering. But this time it was the reverse. Apparently, when it came to combat, Remedios was still more likely to arrive at the correct answer than the other two. Destroy the building without getting anywhere near it! Following her directive, the priest began casting attack magic. The building came tumbling down bit by bit, but it was hard to imagine Yaldabaoth dying under a pile of rubble. With her enchanted armor, even Remedios wouldn't die from something like that, unless she got awfully unlucky. And, besides, Remedios eyed her clean blade. Did he really absorb that powerful blow just by flying away? Did he use a martial art like Fortress? Or was it a special demon ability? There were lots of possibilities, but if she couldn't figure out the answer, they were in serious trouble. With great cracks and pops, the building was completely demolished by the area of effect spells. Remedios found herself having a coughing fit in the cloud of dust it kicked up.
Hey, Remedios, why isn't he coming out? Honored sister, do you think he could have teleported away already?
That arrogant demon? I doubt he would unless he was injured. It's time for a fire attack. Let's pour oil over this and burn it, and then you could bless it, Holy Lady Kalka.
A holy flame, right, honored sister? Should a paladin really use that to damage an opponent? I don't mind. If Remedios thinks that's our best option, I'll do it. No. It's what we must do. If he's a demon, there's no way it won't hurt him.
Many demons had resistance to fire, but a holy flame had both holy and fire attributes. So resistance to fire would only block half the damage.
All right, Holy Lady Kalka. Let's prepare for the ceremony.
There's no time. Can you do a simplified version? Looking at Kalka, she saw her sister out of the corner of her eye as she said, Simplifying the holy flame ritual magic.
There you go, there you go. There we go. Again. Alright, ça. C'est quoi, c'est 4 par 8. Ladder plus corridor sewer. Ok. Ok. C'est fait. Ok. Ça. 4 par 4. Sewer intersection. 4 par 4. Sewer intersection. Ok. Ça, c'en est un autre. Même histoire. 4 par 4. T intersection sewer. Par 2. Sewer tile. On va faire ça. Et après ça, on va faire ça aussi. Quatre par 2. Sewer. Sewer tile. New. Skeletal debris. Sewer tile. Alright. Donc ça, est-ce que c'est la même chose? Ça, c'est 4 par 4. 4 par 4. 2 puddles. Ok. Ça là. C'est pas les mêmes. On va toutes les prendre, là. On va toutes les faire. Wow. Bon. Oh, quelqu'un qui me parle sur Kick apparemment. Ouais, on va aller voir ça. Ok. J'apprécie, là. I appreciate it. Suggestions. I can do suggestions. I don't know. I don't have the expertise for it, but I can try. Can definitely try. Quand est-ce que ça a été envoyé comme message? C'est bien gossant aussi, là. Ça arrête pas de déconnecter. Ouais. C'est de la merde. Ouais. Ça arrête pas de déconnecter. Bon, ben, en tout cas. Je vais faire jouer un peu de musique, là. Pendant que je travaille. Oh, that was the oh, that was aggressive for my ears. I was like, where is this sound coming from? It's the kick. Did I get a kick out of you? Okay. That was aggressive. Loud. I just want some suggestion. Ok, comment je fais ça? Tiens. Un follow. There you go. Okay, I'm gonna go BRB. Hey, pourquoi ça fait ça? Je vais...
Battery 50%.
Ok. Je sais pas pourquoi ça fait ça. Ça me... Kick in and out. Anyway.